Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on the Lights Too Bright podcast. We had a few technical difficulties today, and so we've made it work. Today, I have a friend with me who was sort of a colleague, partly, mainly because we worked in the same practice, but never on the same day, and we never saw each other, and we would just run across each other's notes. And you'll have heard his name in a couple of the other episodes because he is quite well known within the industry and he gets about a bit, or so I've been told. So I'd like you to, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Jonathon Bench. Hi, Jonathon.
Thank you, Keyur, for that wonderful introduction.
It was quite nice.
It was beautiful.
Considering some of the off-camera conversations we have, I thought it was fantastic.
That was very polite. Yeah, I know. I'll take it. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time, mate. I know you're busy, as is everyone who's been kind enough to talk to me. I know you got a lot going on, but I also know you have a lovely journey, which I think is nice. It would be nice for our colleagues to hear because it shows what diversity is available within our profession. So I'm going to start with a simple one.
Okay.
What do you do now? What is your job?
So I do now. My job title is Director of Professional Education International. But what does that really mean? It means I get to work with a lot of really, really amazing people because I act as a bit of the bridge between clinicians, ECPs, whether that be ophthalmologists now or optometrists, from all across the world with the organisation. And some of those people are people that we would recognise as key opinion leaders, and I get to benefit from their genius. And boy, I'm in awe of what they do and how they do it and how they fit it all in. And then we've got other just great practitioners who act as sounding boards and real world educators for us, supporting digital as well as face-to-face education.
Okay, so that's changed a bit since we've last spoken, right? Because you were sort of very contact lensy, and correct me if I'm wrong, then you went quite dry eye-y in a kind of sidestep. So now this is a step up and across, I guess, because what I know of the company that you work for, which is our, I don't think that's a big secret, is that my understanding that it was very optometry, one half sort of ophthalmology. So for you to have an umbrella over both categories means that's quite big. That's quite a big role, or be helping out in both categories.
Yeah, it is. So I'm not supporting on the surgical side. So just to be clear, so I'm still vision care, but our vision care franchise is made up of two product groups, really. We've got contact lenses, contact lens care, and we've got ocular health, which is our dry eye business. But remember, across the whole of international, so outside of the UK, across Europe, going into Asia and Latin America, not so recently, until it left the cluster that I'm part of, we don't just work with optometrists, we work with ophthalmologists, because ophthalmologists might be fitting contact lenses. But dry eye is a subject of both disciplines, both ophthalmology and optometry. It's that's given me the additional opportunities to work with these guys.
I think we forget, particularly in the UK, we don't realise that ophthalmologists in other parts of the world do a lot of contact lens fitting. There are some parts of the world that it's really an ophthalmologist's scope to fit contact lenses, and optometrists are still a bit restricted in that. But I mean, that's a whole different story, and that's a whole lot of politics and things like that, we haven't got time for that. I'm not interested.
It is fascinating, and it's been one of the most amazing things moving into this international role is learning about different countries, different markets, different scopes of practice, and appreciating, broadly, how much more similar we are with each other, but appreciating the important little differences that we have in the way that we work. It's really interesting.
That's fantastic. We'll have a chat about that when I next catch up with you. I'm going to start off with another simple question. You should be able to remember this. You're not that much older than I am. Where's home, Jonathon? Where did you grow up?
Yeah.
Where are you now?
So I suppose I had a bit of a strange start in life because I was born in a hospital on a road called Wally Drive, which I always feel was not a great start in life for anybody. So anybody who was born in Bletchley will recognise that address for the maternity hospital. My parents remind me of it often. But I started off in Leighton Buzzard. And then as I kind of went through late primary school time, we moved up towards Northamptonshire, and I grew up just outside of Silverstone.
Okay. And I know Northamptonshire is still home for you now. And did you always want to be an optometrist, Jonathan? I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot.
No, what I really wanted to be was an airline pilot.
Okay.
I would have loved to be an airline pilot. I think that just was really an attractive career to me, and I thought that would be brilliant. But I was a bit of a realist, and I also recognised that my physics wasn't the strongest science in my armoury.
Okay.
And at that time, at least, I'm sure it's still the same now, you needed to have pretty good physics understanding and background to do the qualification to get that way. So then it was, do you remember, did you do GCAL, that whole careers advice questionnaire when you were at school?
Maybe, I don't remember.
So that said accountant. That wasn't really one that excited me. So I thought lawyer would be quite good. So law was going to be one of the directions. And then I got probably a little bit too interested in the wrong type of law and thought that's probably short lifespan, doing the really interesting and cool stuff. So I thought I'd better find something a little bit more safe.
Okay. But how did you end up in optometry then? Like, was there an inspiration? Was it?
I think it comes from two parts. So my parents are both in the medical profession. They're both qualified as radiographers. And so it was probably always natural to lean in towards a caring profession because you're around it. But interestingly, my dad is a radiographer who never worked as a radiographer. So as soon as he qualified, he went looking for something different. And he got onto the industry side of the radiography business. And then went into ophthalmology as a career. So I grew up around intraocular lenses, literally around intraocular lenses in the kitchen at home. And I suppose that's what opened my eyes to eye care. I didn't have the belief or confidence that I was smart enough to do medicine. And I think I know myself well enough. I don't know if my heart could take doing medicine because I'm a bit too soft-minded at times. And I think it's quite a brutal profession. I admire them massively, what they do and how medics go through what they do. But I kind of maybe understood myself well enough to know that I'm not sure I'm cut for that. So optometry kind of became that obvious one, I suppose. Medical profession, allied to medicine, eye care, seeing eyes around. And I also noticed that the optometrist who had the practice in the town that I went to school, he always had a brand new M3 BMW. And I thought there must be something in it.
Yeah. There's something there. That kind of it. Yeah. Where did you go to school? Where did you do optometry school?
Cardiff University.
Yeah. I seem to have picked on a lot of people who went to Cardiff.
It's one of the greatest schools of optometry in the country, along with all the others.
Get that in there quick. I've got my City Uni hoodie on.
Yeah, you branded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then optometry. Where did you do pre-reg? How did you go with pre-reg?
Pre-reg, I ended up coming back to Northampton. So I was mindful that, if I did my pre-reg away from home, I was just going to cost my parents even more money. So it was probably the sensible choice to go home and be slightly less of a financial burden for them. And I did my pre-reg with Boots.
Okay.
So and my pre-reg, I had 3 pre-reg supervisors that year. I don't know what was that I did, but my first one, he was fantastic. He and his wife decided to move to Northern Ireland partway through, and went
during
on
the Troubles.
I think it was a bit after that. I'm not that old. It was much quieter then. And then I had a stand-in, which actually meant I had to change practices as well. which was, in hindsight, a brilliant thing to do in your pre-reg, to not be based in one practice, to go somewhere else and kind of learn different culture, different politics, all of that sort of stuff, and different patient bases. Because, boy, moving around from town to town, there are patient types per town almost, it feels like, which is quite good fun. And then once my true designated follow-up pre-reg supervisor's firstborn had settled down, and he was back to work after paternity leave, and a little bit of time just to allow him to adjust to being a dad for the first time. And then I moved to my third supervisor. But 3 different characters, and you pick up 3 very, very different styles as a consequence of that. And I think, again, brilliant experience pre-reg to have all of that. Maybe didn't think it at the time, but very quickly realised it was good.
I think even now, I will watch Brian, who, I'm 20 years deep, so I'm not exactly new to this. And Brian will say something, or I'll sit with Deborah, and Deborah will say something, and I'll be like, I like that. I've never thought of expressing it like that or using that analogy. I'm going to take that. And I think the profession's really good at that. I think a lot of the conversations that I've had, particularly with regards to this, a recurring theme is always networking and talking to your peers and things like that. And there is so much you can learn just by listening to someone else's patter. Because once you've got that core information, core learning from university, and then you're just building on it. And how do you build on it? And the more experiences that you can get, I think, the more you'll learn. I was sort of in a similar situation where my pre-reg, I had 2 supervisors basically. So you just learned different things from different people. And then I had a sort of third one at one point. So I was just learning random things from random people. I think it's fantastic. It's a good learning. It's a good way to learn, seeing the different ideas.
I think, and it's interesting you say about, you pick up stuff from Deborah now, you pick up stuff from Brian. I was the same when I was in the practice. And as much as it is really uncomfortable to sometimes have another, peer, qualified person in the room with you think you're being judged, actually, to observe each other allows you to learn, because you actually get to sit back and watch it being done. And that's a perspective you never get when you're, right up close and looking into that person's eyes and interacting with them. It's, it's something that is truly valuable, uncomfortable, but valuable.
Yeah. So pre-reg, boots, which, Northamptonshire?
Northampton, Kettering and Wellingborough.
Wow. Yeah, that is diverse. For those of you who know Northamptonshire, that is diverse. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what? Stayed with boots?
I think I stayed with boots for a short period of time. It was, again, a deliberate choice, because you kind of, when you pass your driving test, haven't you? But you're not really, you don't have all the confidence, you don't have all the experiences. So to stay within a network of people who kind of knew you, and were there for you. And I remember my first day in practice on my own in Wellingborough and thinking, oh my God, I feel vulnerable, so vulnerable. I remember picking up the phone to Patrick, who was my last supervisor, and saying, just checking it. Some lady, that's all right. Because I just feel I need to. And he went, what is it? Well, I don't know. And I spoke to him about something random, but it just settled you down again so that you should carry on. But that was only going to last so long, because I think it's quite difficult to transition from being a pre-reg to qualified in the same practice, because it's very difficult to lose that pre-reg status almost in the eyes of the support team. But it's lovely to have their care and attention as you're just finding your feet again.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. You kind of, people kind of get to know you as we're actually clinical or professionally you've become something a bit more than that, and the dynamic changes sometimes, and some people are okay with it. Some people don't take it very well. And so it's easier just to kind of step away sometimes a little bit from that. So I don't want to talk all about just your career through optometry and things like that, because we know you have had a career in optometry. What I'm really curious about is, how did you end up stepping out of the consulting room? Was there, I use this term with, can't remember, I used this term with, I think it was with Karen. I went, was there a Canon event?
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? What's a Canon event? I was like, need to watch a bit more Marvel. But like, was there a trigger that made you think, but, you know, having heard your story, I'm thinking, was it your dad's kind of example of stepping into industry?
Yeah, no, it was accident.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that I think isn't it called synchronicity? Or maybe it's serendipity, but I think it's synchronicity more, that you're never aware of what's out there until you actually open your eyes, and it's always there. It's a bit like sofa ads. Unless you need a sofa, you don't realize how many sofa ads are on the telly. So when you're tuned into something, you know, opportunities start to present themselves. But after I left Boots, I went to Specsavers, and I was employed. I deliberately went to a brand new Specsavers so I could experience a new store opening.
Okay.
And then,
where was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was Milton Keynes.
Okay.
That was Milton Keynes. And then I moved from there and became a franchisee at Specsavers in Daventry, which happened to be the next town from where I lived. So right in the doorstep. I've never worked so close to, or lived so close to where I've worked ever before, except now, I suppose, because I work from home more. And I was there. I was young when I became a franchisee, but I learned so much. I learned so much through being green and naive. And, you know, you learn so much more through your mistakes, I think. And, you know, it's maturing and growing up in an environment where you've got a team around you and you've got responsibilities to them as well. It's kind of quite a baptism of fire. But I chose to leave. Nothing wrong with the organization. It was more to do with people that I was working with, and I just felt that there was something more pleasant about life that I could go and enjoy other than being around them. So I left, and I thought, well, I think maybe now's the time to go and become an independent. And I had all the plans and all the missions to open practice somewhere, but I didn't know where. So I decided that I was going to locum and use the opportunity to research towns and understand demographics and, you know, opportunities, and just kind of get a plan in my own head as to what I thought I could do and where I could do it. And I registered with Flame Health. I remember it now, and said, look, I'm willing to go anywhere and everywhere. I said, I'm willing to do blocks, to go up here and off there. Nobody's ever offered to do anything like that for us before. I'm there. And 2 days later, Dave Gilbert phoned me up and said, would you be interested in any other opportunities other than locum work? So, yeah, of course. You know, don't say no when someone's made an inquiry to you like that. And I ended up going for and securing a product manager role at the London head office, which was not the plan, not something I'd ever thought of before, but that kind of sent me then down the path, which put me more onto I suppose the commercial side of optometry, loved it, absolutely loved it. Loved the people I worked with, loved the organisation. I think, you know, for a lot of people who worked at DNA, particularly for those of us who worked at the end, it was you know, there's a special bond that exists between us all. But it was really, really, really good time.
Okay, and so, for those who are a bit younger than us, they may not know the journey of DNA, but DNA was one of these very, very old, established opticians practices, and then in the 2000s, 2010.
Yes. So DNA was arguably the oldest retailer on the high street.
Okay.
national retail on the high street. And it was about 20, yeah, you're right, about 2010, 2011,
Yeah.
that Boots and DNA merged to form a new group that took the Boots name. So there was still some DNA practices for a period of time, but eventually the brands moved, Boots brand has moved across the doors of all of those as well.
So then you worked for Boots, or you stepped away, or was there a different opportunity at that point?
So during the time at DNA, I'd moved from product manager to category manager for contact lenses. In fact, for one,
So what does that mean? What does that mean, JB?
I thought that question might come. I was hoping I could maybe get away with it by just saying it and moving on. So ultimately, it's about working with the suppliers to ensure that the practices have the right products available to them. Now, the challenge when you're in a multiple is you can't take every single product that's out there, because you're looking to be as efficient as you can be. And in Donald Aitchison and likewise in Boots and everywhere else really these days, we had subscription schemes for contact lenses, which means that you also maintain a finite number of products you can have on your scheme without it becoming too awkward to manage. And obviously with that becomes some economic benefit as well by rationalizing your range. But then it was also making sure that the right education was coming in from the manufacturers to support the colleagues. The right promotions were coming in from the manufacturers to support the customers. And ultimately that we were running a category that was profitable for the organization, which I'm happy to say we were.
And whilst you were doing all that, were you still seeing patients, or had you totally stepped away from the consulting room at that point?
When I was at Boots and DNA, I would occasionally see patients deliberately because I wanted to keep my eye in, and I wanted to be able to walk in the shoes of the practitioners that I was representing. And if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to do that. And even when I left Boots, I then went back to practice, which is why we were working together for a period of time. So I was in it with Brian before I then went back into industry full time. But even then, as you know, I was a chaos maker once a month in the practice because I'd do a clinic on a Saturday morning so that you or Brian or Deborah could have a Saturday morning off. And I always felt it was really important. I loved it, even though it would always come at the end of the busiest week. I loved the fact that I could go in and I could practice. I was always very honest with people. I told them where I got paid. I didn't get paid to spend time with you guys. They knew the truth about what I was doing. It allowed me to understand patients firsthand. And I did that right up until the Saturday. So it's 5 years ago, Keyur. The Saturday before COVID was my last day in clinic. And then after that, I realized I was more disruptive to you guys than I was helpful, because all the protocols had changed so much through 2020 and lockdown
overnight
that it wasn't fair on you or anybody else in the practice for me to come in and be chaos in on a Saturday morning for my own benefit.
And I mean, that's how we know each other. And then I've always known you really with your Alcon hat on, in one shape or form, or another. It's really interesting. So something you brought up that no one else has brought up yet is the locuming. And I'm always curious about people's opinion on locuming, as in, when do you think is a good time to do it? Do you think, and I think you've alluded to it in that when you first qualified, it was like knowing how to, having your driver's license, but not really knowing how to drive.
Yeah.
So always, do you think, and this, I mean, it's quite contentious, I guess. Do you think people should be kind of limited into when they can become a locum? Or do you have any kind of thoughts on when someone should go into locuming?
I think for me, it's about doing what feels right for you. However, I will say that I would always counsel anybody jumping into being a locum too quickly after qualification, because there is an uncomfortable truth about what we do, which is we do sometimes make mistakes. And, hopefully those mistakes are just half a diopter out or 10 degrees on a sill, or 5 degrees, or whatever it might be, But unless you see the patients and follow those patients up, you never know how to work on yourself and refine your approach and your methodology. So I think this is why I said I chose to stay in the group of practices when I qualified, because I knew that there was still more growth to be had. And I think it makes you a better practitioner in terms of how you're able to then communicate, and also how you're able to hone those skills, so that you learn through your mistakes. Like I said, we learn so much more through the errors that we make. And there's nothing, and this is really weird and perverse as a thought, but there's nothing more satisfying than when you've got a patient that comes back who's not happy and they leave delighted, because you know that you've done something truly important, truly special at that point, to be able to change their perspective or their opinion of that situation.
That, I think that's a really good summary of what I kind of believe that as well. I think when you graduate, as big as a relief it is, and as much money as you might want to make, locuming can be tough, because you don't often get to see the long-term consequences of your decisions. And then you can't learn from that. You can't learn from the mistakes. And to a certain extent, you can't appreciate the victories where you may have saved someone's sight. You may have saved their life, but you just don't know, because you've had to make that on-the-spot decision, and off they've gone. To a certain extent, it's a bit akin to working as a pre-reg and then ending up isolated in a store on your own. I don't like that now. I don't like working on my own. I think I would struggle to ever be in a situation where I'm just practicing on my own, because I just need someone to go and bounce an idea or something off. I had 2 patients today where I went across to Deborah and I said, Deborah, would you mind just having a look at this optomap? One was just because it was a cool image, and I thought, this is cool. Yeah. And then the other one was because I'm like, I don't know, do you mind having a look at that? And it's just nice. And, between us, me and Deborah, between us, like 40 years worth of experience. And it's nice. I don't know what I do now on my own. But anyway, that is it's an interesting topic, and I'm glad you brought up locuming, because like I said, no one else has mentioned it. No one else has said they've gone down that route. There are a lot of pros. You meet a lot of people. You get to travel. Financially, it can be extremely rewarding. But sometimes it can also be really lonely. And I do think with locuming, and then I'll stop talking, because I just thought I'd mention it. With locuming, sometimes you have to be quite strong-willed, so that you are not bullied into just doing what the practice manager, other people around you want you to do. Because ultimately you're the professional who's signing off on that piece of work that has been done.
And I never experienced that, I'm pleased to say. And, I hope that most people don't, because the majority of people, and I think I've had we've certainly talked about this before. I don't know if you've spoken about it in fact, I know you did mention it last time, that it is a profession that we work in that's full of really decent people, nice people. We're very fortunate, actually, in optometry that, overwhelmingly it's decent folk.
Yeah. I think we're very lucky. And you will have heard this. Initially when I started this pod, I was like, let's talk about people who'd left the profession and or left the consulting room, and why they'd left the consulting room. And then I changed my mind. I went, well, that's just negative. And the profession actually is quite a positive profession. Like with everything else, people have things they don't like and things that could be improved. But let's celebrate the profession and how you are able to diversify within the profession. And that's why I have wonderful people like you on, who are happy to share and tell a good story, and good for advice whenever I need it. We've just hit 30 minutes, JB.
I think we have.
I told you it would fly. We just get chatting, and it's just a nice chat. I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, which is, if you were to give one piece of advice to your peers, to your colleagues, either professionally or even in life, right, that you think's kind of a nice motto or credo to kind of go by, what kind of thing do you think you would say?
I think there's one thing I'd say, and there's one thing I've learned, maybe,
Okay.
which is to be good to yourself, and be true to yourself. So the be true to yourself piece is something that we should live by. Be honest, be authentic, be decent, be everything you want other people to see, and live that. But the be good to yourself piece is just being aware of, and it links back into this authenticity, what does and doesn't work for you. Because if you're then good, you'll find that the good stuff starts to happen, and you don't beat yourself up quite so much.
Fantastic. I think I've done enough. I've been around long enough, luckily. I've been around long enough to be able to relate to that. And I do think that sometimes people need to hear it, because you can get carried away. You can carried away, swept away with what's happening around you, and you end up maybe doing things that it's not really the way you want to do it. But that's fine. So that, I really appreciate that, mate. You've taken a fair amount of time, especially as with the technical difficulties. We didn't start till half an hour. We started when we were meant to have finished.
Yeah. And hopefully this setup with the phone and everything is not going to give you a weird screen view, but
so it'll be interesting, because we will see. It will upload it, so I'll be curious to see how the quality works. But I'm gonna let you get back to your family. I'm gonna let you enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm gonna thank you again for being so wonderful and honest. Are you at OSI?
no,
Okay.
not this
So
year.
then I won't see you at OSI. I will see you around.
You'll probably see me locally before the BCLA, but if not, it'll be in Birmingham in June.
Okay. Well, that'd be great. So thank you very much, and take care. Lovely evening.
Will do. You too, Care. Thank you.